What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and once again I am joined in the Batcave, this time dark and gritty and realistic, with Mike and Megan. Guys, how are you doing?
We're doing all right, yeah. I mean, we have brief discussion before that we press record. We watched Wonder Woman 84 in between. We watched the 3 Batman films, and then before doing this podcast, we watched 84. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of DC stuff, but
a lot of DC.
We watched all the Batman films and stuff. Megan's been had a Batman overload a bit. Yes. I think by Dark Knight Rises, she was like, "I am glad this is the last one. I'm kind of done with Batman."
Yeah. You've done a lot. I'm really impressed you've stuck this one out, Megan. So well done.
Thank you.
But yes, there's a fair tonal change between this and Wonder Woman 84. So we're going to be doing the Nolan verse, or the Nolan Batman trilogy. Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises. And again, a very different tonal shift from where we were before. So the Schumacher series, or the Schumacher duology, really did sort of kill off the franchise. It was, in the mid-90s. Warner Brothers thought it was dead for a while, and Nolan brought it back in 2005 with the first Batman film. So let's just get straight in, really, because this trilogy, in many cases, is considered one of the best sort of superhero trilogies. But the Nolan verse as a whole, what are your guys' thoughts on the whole Nolan verse thing, and this thing of having it more real than previous incarnations?
Do you want to go first, or shall I?
As a whole, I really enjoyed it. As a whole, I really enjoyed the Nolan verse. I think what I've realized with watching all of the Batman movies is that I don't actually care about Batman that much. So, the thing that frustrates me is, which we'll go into in more detail, I suppose, is that obviously, there are 3 films. As a whole, I do enjoy them. I just feel like, for me, they don't explain certain parts enough. So in each of the 3 films, I just felt that there was a bit of time it was just a bit of filler, where they could have used it to introduce more information about certain characters. So Scarecrow, first of all, who the fuck is he? Why does he suddenly appear in all 3 of the movies? And I know nothing about him apart from that he wears a potato sack on his head. I don't know anything about that character. So when we watched the first one, I wasn't overly fussed by it. Because what I find is that with a lot of the Batman films, they tend to just either use the same villain over and over and over again, or they throw so many villains into it and don't actually explain any of their backstories that it doesn't give me any information about the characters. And that's what I like about films. So that's why I like the Marvel movies, for example. Each film has an origin, and then it all connects, and then it becomes this one big story. But with Batman, it just doesn't seem to do that. I don't actually know anything about Scarecrow. I don't know why he's got this weird powder that he can make people hallucinate with. And that he's got this weird connection to Liam Neeson, whose character I can't even remember what he's called. Yeah. So yeah, as a whole, I did enjoy it. There's just things about it that frustrate me.
You did say, when we were watching it, you asked me a few questions about Scarecrow, and I was like, I don't really know most of these answers well enough. And one of the things you did say is that, you don't care about Batman much, but you care about all the supporting cast. So you're most excited whenever Gordon came on screen. You were excited about it because you love Gary
Gordon.
Oldman.
Yeah, I like Gary Oldman, but also Commissioner Gordon's. He's not shit in these films. He actually contributes something to the society, whereas in the previous ones, all he does is turn off the freeze thing, and it's oh, well done.
Yeah, I'd say in this.
Whereas
one,
me,
he sort of justifies his promotion, at least in these films. You're sort of like, oh, that's where you become commissioner. Fair enough. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I would say with these films, I mean, I loved them. I found that my first impression of thinking them was I thought Dark Knight was my favorite, then Rises, then Begins. But I've actually swapped them a little bit. For me, it's now Dark Knight, then Batman Begins, then Dark Knight Rises. But the reviews are slightly different, though. I think that generally Rises is actually reviewed really, really well, which I was surprised by because I seem to recall when it first came out, there's a bit of resistance to it. But obviously you can get into that at some point, but I feel like Rise is an excellent film. It's just got 2 or 3 plot holes that I just can't really get over. But I thought Batman Begins, I enjoyed Batman Begins much more this time than when I think I've only watched it once or twice. So I really, really enjoyed it. And I think the trilogy does work in the way that 9 times out of 10 with films, when you have a trilogy, at least one of the films sucks or is at least substantially worse than all of the other ones. Matrix trilogy, unless it's like made from books. Lord of the Rings trilogy is pretty strong, but like the Matrix trilogy, first one is phenomenal. The second one, I think, has some incredible scenes in it, but it's a bit iffy. And then the third one just falls off the rails. And that's kind of what I find. Yeah, and that's what happens a lot of the time I find with trilogies, where I find this is probably, excluding sort of MCU movies to a degree, even though they kind of do in some way suffer from the same thing. I feel like these 3 are probably the closest 3 films I've seen that weren't adapted directly from books that are as close together in my own rating of them, I'd say, in that way.
No, I'd agree with that. I totally agree. I mean, going back and watching them this time, one of the things I do realize, you say, is there are plot holes in this? And the one thing I find a little frustrating is the depiction of time passing in this film. It's like the Batman Begins is a really good example. Like, you are told outright at one point that Bruce Wayne has been gone for 7 years. So you go, okay, that's great. So he's been gone for 7 years. But then how old is he supposed to be when he goes to the court and, he sees Joe Chill there and sort of like, so there's little bits. I'm like, oh, how long is this film taking? Like, does the Dark Knight take, is it a weekend? Is this like 3 days? Or, so that's the only thing I would say is sometimes they have trouble with the passing of time. But other than that, I think I think these films stand up really, really well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in comparison to the other ones, they're like amazing. Like,
I think
they're really, really good.
Batman Returns is probably the only one that I'd say is near to how good these ones are for me personally, and I think that's because Danny DeVito just knocks it out of the park in that film. And I think that it's kind of what Megan said slightly earlier, which is Batman is, in the comics, he's a bit deeper and there's a bit more to him, but generally Batman is a pretty easy individual to understand. You can get into the deeper parts of how he interacts with the Bat family and that sort of stuff in the comics and whatnot. But the big thing with Batman is he's got so many cool villains. And I think that this film does, even though, I agree with Megan's point about Scarecrow, it doesn't really give you any information. I think that Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, Joker and Bane are all brilliant in their own ways, rather than, what was it, Batman Forever, whereas the Two-Face was basically just a crap Joker. It was like, at least in this film, Two-Face obviously is in Dark Knight as well, but like all of the villains feel like they are actually their own person, which I really liked.
Yeah, no, that's another good point. I think, like I said, the villains get, apart from, say, Megan, you're right, sort of Scarecrow in this one's a little bit thin, but he's almost like a second tier baddie in this, isn't he? Like, because he's sort of like a facilitator for Ra's al Ghul and this other stuff. But in the comics, I mean, Scarecrow, Dr. Crane, he's never really had like a definitive origin. There's usually the usual crap that they get, that, he was treated up really, really badly as a child, and, he had all these phobias, and so he was bullied, and so he learned to sort of adapt them and control his own fear, and now he's obsessed with learning about how fear works and utilizing it against people, and that's about it. But yeah, so it's not really explained in Batman Begins. But, I mean, let's jump into Batman Begins and start with the obvious thing first and foremost. What are your thoughts then on Christian Bale as our new Bruce Wayne?
I like him, but his voice annoys me.
The Bat voice.
The Bat voice annoys me. Hey, what's going on?
Where is she?
Well, I would say the thing I noticed more, because that Bat voice becomes incredibly obvious and sort of stands out more so through the film series. at one point, like, because he always hangs around with his mouth open as well, and so he's talking to people who know he's Bruce Wayne in the Bat voice, and I'm like, they know who you are. It's all right. Like if I was doing that to Alex, or like, she'd be like, "What are you doing, you prat?" Sort of talk normally, but he sounds a bit like the helmet, like the Bat cowl. I'm not sure. Has he cut out a way to breathe? Because it sounds like his nose is blocked all the time. So I'm like, has he not cut the bottom off his mask? Like, can he not breathe? Is he always breathing through his mouth? Is that the problem? That's an easy fix for Batman, surely.
Oh yeah, you'd think that. I did while watching several of the Batman films. I do often look at the noses and think how. I always think about how hot he would be. Like it's kind of like a rubber of the cowl sort of thing, isn't it? I think at certain points it's a bit vague on like in this trilogy. Certain points it can kind of be snapped almost and broken because I think they change what it's made out of occasionally. I know in Dark Knight it starts as one thing and then he says it needs to be changed because he can't turn his neck and stuff. So apart from that, but like the rubber in it, I would feel it's pretty looks pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. But I mean, I think Christian Bale probably, I think he does probably the best Bruce Wayne. I'd say
he's my favorite Batman out of all the Batmans that I've seen.
Yeah, I'd say he's my favorite. Generally, I'm one of the people who believes I really liked Ben Affleck's Batman, but not the films that he's in. I just think because he's quite stocky and he's kind of, he's basically lost all hope almost, and he looks angry and that kind of fits. But his Bruce Wayne isn't quite as strong. Whereas I feel like Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne is absolutely perfect, especially that horrendously cringy scene. I think it's in Batman Begins where he pretends to be drunk.
When he goes into the hot tub with the girls.
I mean that is funny as well. It's the bar at the hotel, isn't it? And he just buys the whole hotel.
Oh yeah. He pretends to be drunk so that he gets everybody out of the house.
Yes, when Ra's al Ghul kind of comes and attacks. Yeah. So I think apart from his Bat voice, which is a bit jarring at times, I do think he is. I'd say almost rating wise, I'd say he's like a 9 or 10 out of 10 for Bruce Wayne. I'd say probably Batman maybe an 8. I think that he's really good as Batman. There's not anything I could really point to and go, he's terrible at this or that. I just feel like he didn't quite hit the nail perfectly for me with his representation. What about you, Scott?
No, I like him, and I think because I do like Christian Bale as an actor. And the guy sort of he commits to his roles. Like he's one of those actors that sort of, I mean, for this one, I think this was followed up by The Machinist, or it was
rough. Jeez.
Or The Machinist was just before it. In fact, I think it was just before it. And he went down to
his transformation of that is mental.
Yeah, and he went down to some ridiculously low weight, didn't he? Like less than 10 stone. So he packed on like a load of weight and muscle to do this. So, I'll never disparage like what he does for a role, and he's fine in this. He's good, and I like the fact that they give him that origin story and motivation. The fact that this trauma has sort of lived with him, so he goes off and joins the League of Shadows. And he's obviously, he's trying to sort of find a way of dealing with criminals and other stuff. Like, I feel that this feels like a more authentic journey to becoming Batman than some of the others. Like, whilst I enjoy, especially like with Michael Keaton, whilst I've enjoyed that thing, I enjoy that Batman. I never see sort of Michael Keaton going around sort of, the Far East or some sort of Middle Eastern place looking to be trained to become, the best martial artist in the planet. He just comes across as like, oh no, it's angry Michael Keaton. This has a level of authenticity to it, which I really enjoy, and he commits to. So yeah, and I think that lends weight to the whole trilogy. So I do enjoy him in that way.
Yeah, I think the training in it is I think the Batman Begins, as you say, I forgot how much depth they go into in him. Obviously, it's called Batman Begins, so you think by the title I'd realise that. But like how the majority of the film is him actually specifically training to be Batman. And I think because Megan was asking me a few questions while we were doing it, and obviously I don't know as much about Batman in the comics as many of you do, or some of the other guys in the Comics Emotional or other people we hang out with and things. So from my knowledge, Batman Begins is pretty close, isn't it, to the general comic origin? Obviously, the parents being killed is basically every Batman, but I meant like the Ra's al Ghul training League of Shadows sort of jazz.
Yes, I mean Ra's al Ghul comes in is not really part of his training. Ra's al Ghul came in the 70s, was created by Neil Adams and Danny O'Neill for their run in the 70s, which is great. I mean that's where Talia al Ghul comes in as well. This idea of When Raz and Talia were introduced in the comics, it was very much for that reason. Sort of like Raz sees him as the greatest detective and all this other stuff, and so has almost chosen him as a successor and to be the father of his grandchildren. So he's sort of setting Bruce up with Talia, and that's where you get Damian Wayne from. So in the most recent Robin, Damian Wayne is Bruce's son, comes from this sort of like setup with Talia. But the character Deckard that Liam Neeson plays before it's revealed he's Raz is part of his origin. So the character of Deckard has come up several times. Was a detective and martial artist that he spent some years with and trained him in his origin. So yeah, there's some nice little nods in this to the origins in the comics and stuff. So that's really impressive, I think.
Yeah, it's cool. And the training montage, and I quite like that in these films, I think especially in Batman Begins, it didn't do the thing quite as much, which they do in the MCU constantly, which is overcutting when it's an action scene. One of my favorite things, and especially in martial arts movies and stuff, in things like The Raid or even like season 2 of Daredevil on Netflix, there's a couple of one-shot scenes, and it's in Old Boy. There's one of the scenes,
the corridor scene,
yeah. Anything that's like that, the Raid 2 does it as well. I just think is some of my favorite things because it's so difficult to record a one shot where you just do not cut, and you've got all these people who come in, get thrown off screen, and then the main person is still doing all the choreography. Whereas as much as I love the Captain America films, Captain America's films where they're quite handheld combat, it is like fist gets lifted up, it goes towards the person, it cuts, the person gets hit, cut, and it just. Whereas I found in this, there was a bit more. Like the katana stuff's quite cool as well. I forgot about that. So I really like the start of this film. I think it started really strong.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, what are your thoughts on? Because we've dealt with a lot of Gotham City, so to have him, shot off into other parts of the world for a large part of the start of the film, what were your thoughts when that sort of was where it started?
I mean, I found it quite interesting because again, it kind of links into the fact that I like to know more information about the characters. So the fact that it went into slightly this like weird martial art training that Bruce Wayne did to obviously eventually become Batman, it's quite interesting. I just wish there was a little bit more of it so that it just went into a little bit more detail about it. I'm just someone that really likes detail, and because it is a trilogy and because obviously that character is kind of consistent throughout the entirety of the Nolan verse, then it would be nice to find out a bit more information about this like super mysterious character.
It's about Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because obviously he appears in the third one.
Things like a vision.
It's kind of like a vision-y type thing. It's not actually him. Yeah. So it kind of just made me feel after seeing that in that film, it was just like, I just wish there was a little bit more detail about this guy originally. But obviously it's not the Ra's al Ghul. What is his name?
Raz al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul. It's not his film, so I get why they didn't do that, because obviously it's a Batman movie.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's the character again of Ra's al Ghul in this. He's part of the League of Shadows, but they make it that like he is the League of Shadows, So, but again, sort of linking it back to the comic, in the book, he's been around for hundreds of years. He has these sort of pits called the Lazarus pits that he uses every now and then to sort of youth him, and then he carries on. And whilst that may actually be the case with Liam Neeson, like the man's in his 70s and still doing action films, he may have Lazarus pits. I don't know. It feels like you say that I know it's not his origin story, but like I say, it would be nice for him to be sort of relating to Bruce and going like, look, yeah, I started similar to you. I've been doing this for 20, 30 years, but I come from the same as you. I do this for a reason. To know some of his motivations, rather than we bring balance. When later on when he gives his pep talk really for the whole finale, of when things reach the sort of pinnacle of corruption and decadence, we come in and address the balance. And that just seems to be his motivation, but it's never sort of like, well, why do you feel that? Like, what's the point of what you do? So I do know what you mean. But I'm glad
I feel like that.
Bruce.
Yeah, the Bruce stuff is excellent.
Yeah, I like that. I like finding out more about Batman.
Yeah, it was a very chunky, good sort of story, and as you guys kind of say, as it was a trilogy, they got enough time to actually kind of delve into Bruce rather than it trying to be like the first 10 minutes of a film. But I found with Ra's al Ghul's sort of motivation as well is that he was kind of bigging up Gotham to be, he said he basically was trying to make an example out of it in some ways and things like that. And obviously the corruption's got really bad and all these sorts of other things. And I was just thinking, I was like, is Gotham meant to be, is it a part of New York? Is it its own thing? I forget.
Yeah, it's changed over time. Originally, it was like Metropolis and Gotham and all these were all based around New York. That was the design. I think the modern geography or in canon geography for DC is that like Metropolis is like New York, Gotham is Chicago. And Chicago is renowned for its crime rates and the murder rate and stuff. So
you seem like an odd target because if Ra's al Ghul, he talked about I think they sunk Atlantis and they burnt down Rome or whatever, and you talk about all these massive cities and you think, well, you go for Gotham, you don't go for. That's the thing that threw me off. I was like, what? You've taken all these grandiose, massive things. If you burn Gotham to the ground, it's not like London or even Washington DC or like any. There's probably about another 5 places in America you could probably choose, or another probably 50 places in the world. And it's just like
Gotham doesn't have good luck, does it? Gotham genuinely has the shittest luck in the world.
You've got to think when people live in Gotham. You've got to think why do you still live here?
Yeah, why do you still just move out of Gotham?
Yeah, I honestly think it's because the property prices are rock bottom. Because everyone's like, I've got this penthouse apartment right next to Bruce Wayne and it's cost me tuppence. That's why I'm living. I paid off my mortgage in 3 weeks. No, you are right. I mean, the thing as well is it seems like a bit of a step down as well, because you say they talk about sort of like, like you say, jokes about sinking Atlantis, sacking Rome, bringing those. Like Rome was an empire, and all of a sudden they're like, and now we're going to take down this city. You're like, well, it's one city in an entire country. Like, surely you want to be bringing down America or you want to be bringing down something larger and maybe, I mean, it obviously escalates because it sort of pays off in rises. But like, it actually feels like quite a small, the stakes in this feel kind of small in a weird way. Because it would be a national tragedy. Like everything that happens in this film would be a national tragedy. There'd be people over America and be like, oh, we remember when this happened in Gotham and whatever. But like, it would be forgotten with this isn't like Twin Towers kind of terrorism. It's just like, some poor people went mad in the shades, and that's about it. Or in the Narrows. It's sort of. I mean, this whole film series, the Nolanverse, is very much about social standing, isn't it? Like, it's always about sort of like in this, it sort of really hammers home that there's the opulence and decadence of the majority of Gotham, and then you've got if it's the shade, it's the Narrows, isn't it? The Narrows is this sort of like really shitty area of the city that sort of houses all these horrible people and Arkham and all this other stuff. And then the second one has a similar thing about sort of chaos and people sort of like, the people being horrible to each other. And then the third one's literally about 1%ers being turfed out their homes and stuff. I feel like Nolan may have an issue with rich people, weirdly. But yeah, it just feels like, the stakes don't fit for this organization that's supposed to be sort of like bringing balance to the world. It feels like kind of a small target, but I don't know. Maybe we were more naive in 2005.
Maybe, yeah. It does feel like a more, in many ways, more modern than that kind of film, doesn't it? Like when you watch it, it doesn't feel like a 15-year-old film. It still feels like, because it's so gritty. I know, obviously, like the sort of the late 90s and the early 2000s were kind of rife with grit in the film. That was kind of the cool thing to do a lot of the time. But it does feel quite advanced. But I seem to recall when we finished watching it, I did say something like, the biggest problem I have with this film is that it didn't feel like there were any stakes. Like even the end where I think there's the monorail and they've got that machine on it that's turning all the water to gas, and they've put the hallucinogenic spray thing in the water supply. I just don't understand
what the point is.
Well, the scarecrow part.
The scarecrow part, like I don't understand what his role in it all is, apart from being some like little like side monkey.
It was like a throwaway.
He's just a part of the puppeteer, isn't he? He's just,
yeah.
I think there's one throwaway line about him holding the city to ransom. That's what he thought they were going to do, and I was like, he's doing all this for some money. It's like, oh, that's a bit for him as a character. That just felt a bit weak.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a reveal, isn't it? I mean, the film,
Mm.
because the thing is that this film, what they're aspiring to is escalation. Because you start with the gangsters, you know, you get like he goes when he finally becomes Batman, he goes against the Falcone family and he starts to bring those down, and then he links that to Jonathan Crane as the Scarecrow because of the drugs that the things that are being shipped into Gotham and then being passed on to the Scarecrow, and then you find out they're pouring it all into the water, and you're like, oh no, this is. I mean, poisoning the water is more like the Joker kind of. That's the first Joker story ever was him poisoning the reservoir, and that sort of thing. So I think it sort of taps into that. But yeah, it's supposed to be like, so the Scarecrow's the big bad, and it's supposed to be this reveal of like, oh no, you thought he was the bad because you know the Scarecrow from the comics, but actually it's Ra's al Ghul, and I think it worked in 2005, when this was first released, you go, oh, that's a reveal, that's a twist. Now, I think there's so many similar things that have been done in films, even not say the MCU films, and you keep sort of getting this, the puppeteer, Thanos is the puppeteer behind the scenes and stuff, that when you get this, you go, oh yeah, of course that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I did also say to Mike at the end that I'm surprised I didn't guess the ending, solely based on the fact that we didn't see Ra's al Ghul's character die at the beginning.
Yeah, because he got saved.
Because obviously
Batman,
he said no. Because
at the start, Batman carries him out, doesn't he? Because there's the whole building setting on fire, and then Bruce Wayne carries him out, and is like,
oh yeah, he saved his life. Yeah.
And then obviously, as you say, when that happened, you was like, I knew he was going to come back. I was like,
well, yeah, he's going to come back because
you see him survive, so it's like definitely.
Oh yeah, I was getting confused there. Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah, and that's it. I think, like you say, because you get them. I do kind of like the reveal though at the party when he's been. It's sort of he goes to the party and someone says, "Oh, I've got someone you need to meet, Bruce," and he's like, "All right," and he turns around and it's some sort of Asian guy who's got the sort of the goatee beard, which is notoriously sort of in that sort of thing of notoriously Ra's al Ghul. And he's like, "You're not Ra's. What do you mean using it?" And then Liam Neeson sort of like pops up and it's like, hey, got ya. Hey, it just feels like that gotcha moment, and I do kind of like that bit. But again, it's this thing where Bruce is then acts like a complete dick to get everybody out, and he's like get out. Yet no one sort of goes. There's all these really muscly guys still just sat around looking sullen. That seems. I don't recognise any of these people. That seems suspicious.
The other thing with that as well is that there would have been a better way to get everyone out of your house. He acted like a drunken buffoon, and then there was someone that was just like, "The apple has fallen very far from the tree, Mr. Wayne." I'm like, shut up, fucking bellend. Such an unnecessary comment to make. And it's just like Bruce Wayne could have done that in a better way. He could have just been like, "Everybody out. I'm kind of done," rather than this acting like this drunken idiot and shaming like the name of his family.
It does work. It does kind of work in the end because obviously when the thing, I agree with you, at the time it is like, that is a bit.
It was, yeah.
But because his house gets burnt down, I quite like the newspaper headline that says drunken billionaire burns down own house. I liked that because I was like, okay, that, but obviously Bruce Wayne wouldn't have necessarily known they were there to set his house on fire.
But it's again, like you say, it's an instant response, isn't it? And it shows where his brain goes. He's like, oh, okay, I've got to do this. I mean, again, in the comics, one of the things that Bruce has always done is play up the sort of like, the Playboy image and the ladies and the drinking and all this other stuff. And especially in the comic Year One, written by Frank Miller, there's a scene in that where he's actually drinking apple juice and he's at some point pretending it's whiskey and stuff to convince at the time Lieutenant Gordon, and so it's sort of tapping into that. But again, like you could just come out and go. You can even get like Alfred to come out and go, "I'm really, really sorry, but we've actually found there's a gas leak downstairs. We're going to have to evacuate the house. Can everybody leave in an orderly manner?"
Yeah,
done. And you don't look like a dick. So, yeah.
It was pretty
Alfred
rough.
was great though in this film. I liked Alfred in these films in the trilogy. Yeah,
he's badass.
Master Wayne. That's like literally all I've been saying for the past few days. Master Wayne.
He is great. I mean,
I will say about Alfred though. No, I was going to say about Alfred because Michael Caine is really good in these films. And I like the fact that they keep that slightly sort of sarcastic sense of humor that Alfred has. Like he's willing to take the piss out of out of Bruce every now and then to keep him grounded. And especially when he comes back after 7 years, he's like, "Well, we thought you're dead, so I've got all your money." Sort of thing. This is like my jet, and he's when he's looking for a car, he says, "When you get back, you can borrow the rolls." Like I think he just nails that sense of humor really well.
I also really liked, I can't remember what film it's in, but there was a bit where Bruce is like, "Aren't you going to tell me I told you so?" And he's like, "I don't want to right now." And then he's like, "But I did tell you so."
I actually wrote a note down, literally writing, the humor in this is really good. It has fun moments without ruining the plot like Batman and Robin did. Because that is Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, both of them is basically like, okay, let's pause the plot here. Let's have a dumb joke that doesn't fit anywhere. And then let's continue the plot. Whereas it's like, that isn't funny. That ruins everything. Whereas in this, it is just, it was exactly as you say, like Alfred has got that clever humor. He's almost the one person who Bruce Wayne has no power over in that kind of sense. So he can just kind of give it a lot. And I quite like that from the Burton-verse Alfred as well. Both of them are quite... The Burton-verse one's a bit more sassy and a bit more camp, but like the Michael Caine one is like proper. It's quite sad though, his whole story. Like the end scene in Dark Knight Rises when he's over Bruce Wayne's grave always gets me, and it's like I think he does do that. He has the emotional side, like, and it's like the seeds of it are sown even at the start. Like even when he often says like, "I wish you'd like gone and not come back. Like I want you away from the city." Like every time he mentions it, he's like, "I don't even want." I think in Dark Knight Rises, after Bruce had those like several years where he just did nothing, and he was like, "I didn't want you to come back to Gotham. I want you to go traveling, settle down with someone, and leave. I don't want you to come back."
He wanted to be in that little cafe in Italy and to look over and just see him happy. And I was like, "Oh, I love that." And then I was like, when it got to the end of I know that we're skipping ahead, but when we got to the end of the trilogy, I was like, "Mike, it's gonna happen." I was like, Alfred's gonna see him across the tables.
And from the start, I think it works really well with that Alfred.
It does. I mean, of all of them, I mean, again, I like the Michael Gough Alfred. I think, like you say, he's a bit more sassy and a bit more sort of, willing to take the piss. But the Michael Caine, Christian Bale relationship feels legit. Like they have real chemistry, and you do feel that like Michael Caine has like a fatherly affection for him. You know, he does sort of legitimately feel for him. He will give in and do some of this stupid stuff, but he really does care about Bruce and what's happening to him. So, I do think he is. He's the best. I think he's the best Alfred we've come across. Like of all of them.
Yeah, he's my favorite.
Yeah, he's great. And I was going to mention as well is that I've realised when watching this trilogy that I don't think Lucius Fox. He's not in the other. He's not in the other films, is he? Which is Morgan Freeman's character. But am I right in thinking he is in the comics and that sort of jazz?
Lucius has been around for quite some time. Yeah, in fact, Lucius has a son, Luke, who became a character called Batwing. So he's actually part of the Bat family as well. So
he's a good character. I like his character.
Yeah. He's another one who actually
he's also sarcastic.
Yeah, he's very sarcastic to Bruce Wayne. I love that in each film he does have some sort of funny thing he says, but I like that, like in Dark Knight when you see that mobile phone sonar thing that Bruce Wayne's put together, and Lucius Fox is like, "I hate this. This goes against everything I like." And Bruce Wayne's like, "I get it. That's why you're the only person who has control. Just put your name in at the end." And I like that sort of thing where he's got these strong morals. But even in like Batman Begins and the other ones, he's on the right side. Even if he's breaking certain rules, he's doing it for the morally right reasons above all else. And he pushes out Rutger Hauer out, doesn't he, in Batman Begins?
Yes.
I also like the fact that he doesn't want Bruce to tell him that he's Batman. He actively makes sure that he doesn't tell him that he's Batman, even though he knows that he's Batman.
Yeah, there's I love that. One of the things I like about this film, in fact, this whole series is, Bruce goes out of his way to prove he's not Batman. Like, he becomes the drunk, stupid playboy. So the idea is that no one's going to say, "Oh yeah, Bruce Wayne's Batman," for whatever reason. But people figure it out really quickly in many cases. Like, when he comes and sort of talks to Lucius and he's getting the kit, and he literally goes through and he's like, I'm going spelunking, and then I'm going to go parachuting, and he goes basically says, "Oh yeah, well we've got this kit and then this kit, and then there's the tumbler." And he's like, "Does it come in black?" And you're just like, "Oh, for God's sake!" Like, you know, you might as well just lean in. And, yeah, he might just lean in and go, "I'm Batman." We know, we know, Mr. Wayne. We get it.
Honestly, the fact that people don't realize that he's Batman is infuriating. Like, especially like when it got to the third one, and Commissioner Gordon just doesn't know, and then obviously Joseph Gordon. I don't know.
Yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah.
Him, and he was just like, well, I know that he's Batman. I knew it as soon as I met him. And then Commissioner Gordon was like, well, I don't want to know. And I'm like, mate, you should fucking know. You are the commissioner of Gotham. You're meant to be like top-notch police officer. And I'm sorry, but it's pretty fucking obvious that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Like, it is obvious.
Yeah, it is blatantly obvious. One of the things is that I'll get to I'll say it now. It's a story fix for me. It's because I agree because Commissioner Gordon in this trilogy has been so proactive, and he's actually good. Like, he comes up with a plan that captures the Joker. You know, he's willing to pretend, to fake his death and all this other stuff. For him to get to the end, and then for Batman, the end of the third film, and for Batman to be like, a hero it can be anybody. It can even be a young police officer putting a coat around a young boy, and then this other thing. And then Gordon's like, Bruce Wayne, like. It's almost like you're going, "Oh, you dick! You can't be that stupid." Like a better ending for me would have been like a better ending for me would have been for him to be sort of about to say who he is, and for him to say like, I've always known who you are. I'm a good detective." Like,
yeah,
I just don't care.
I liked the jacket around the shoulder bit. I like the fact that they referred back to the first film with that, and that it was, then not Commissioner Gordon, Lieutenant, whatever.
Yeah,
just Gordon, just Jim. I like the fact that it was a nod back to it, but honestly, it's
you yelped. You basically vocally
I was like,
said,
"For fuck's sake!" I was like, "You should." It's like, it's not a surprise. Bruce Wayne. It's like everybody knows.
What, that guy with infinite resources who seems to disappear for months at a time, and Batman is the most active.
Right. Okay. That's also the thing is that Batman disappeared off the face of the earth. Okay, after the second film, and so did Bruce Wayne. Like, how is it not obvious that suddenly this really rich guy disappeared exactly at the same time the Batman disappeared, and then came back when Batman came back? It's just,
Whereas conversely, it's got that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is basically Robin / Nightwing, and it's like him as Robin. He, as I said, that he knew the second he met him. You just knew immediately, and you're thinking. I mean, I know in the comics and stuff that I think that is Tim Drake. Is that? Yes. Is that the one of the Robins as well? I get them so confused.
No. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is a complete fabrication for the movies, and we'll get on to the end of it. But the nod of when she goes, "Oh, you should use your real name," and he goes, "Robin." That is a groan-inducing moment because you're like, "Oh." All right, fine, fair enough. But again, just to say about the people that don't realise things, I think Catwoman, in the third one, there's a bit where she's sort of talking with Bruce, and he says, "I've got powerful friends," and then Batman turns up that night, and she's like, "Well, he wasn't joking. He's got powerful friends." I'd be like, "Oh, it's you, Bruce." Oh, okay. Yeah, like,
I always found that with the kids, with all women, like I found with the Burton versus these ones, it's like if you, especially I think we mentioned it in the last one about what's his name, Val Kilmer. He's got the most defined lips ever, and it's like he looks. You can identify him just by his lips. Like when you see, same with Christian Bale. It's like, someone who's got loads of money who seems to be really good at acrobatic things, but his lips look really familiar. And I always think when a woman makes out with Bruce Wayne or Batman and then is around the other one, it sounds weird, but surely the smell, like or the scent, or something. Yeah. On
that front, though, just before we go back to sort of round up Batman Begins, this thing of knowing in Dark Knight Rises, when he does come back and Commissioner Gordon's in hospital, and he basically puts on a ski mask and he gets into his hospital room and he's talking to him on the Batman, using the Bat voice. At no point does he sort of go, "What? Why are you wearing an Armani suit? That's an expensive looking suit. That is. Are you Bruce Wayne?"
That scene annoyed me.
It absolutely down the whole
hospital. He jumps through the window.
Yeah.
You can just walk down. Like
if that was because it's so cool. Because when he jumps out that window, it's absolutely dead. And I don't know if, especially at the moment, I assume hospitals are very busy. But I've been to hospitals at many times. They're very, very busy places. If someone sort of like basically abseils down the side of a hospital, there'll be somebody outside going, "Bloody hell, what's going on?" I just saw a guy abseil down a building.
Wearing an Armani suit, and Bruce Wayne's been shown for ages.
And this like shit balaclava.
Yeah.
By that point, you just think, you really need to conserve your identity. Everyone you love and care about, apart from Alfred, is dead by now. Like, do you really need to conserve? Not to be a dick about it, but like, Gordon's the one person you know's not gonna screw you over, and he's the person that you make such a faff trying to make sure he knows that you're Batman. It's just like, oh, come on, just let him know. Obviously, he does at the end, but anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's good. So going back to, we've talked about the thing, but like I say, I was going to say about the details. The fact we just talked about the suit, Lucius providing the suit. What do you think about that? That the suit has almost a technological origin rather than just being that Bruce Wayne makes the suit. What are your thoughts about that? You know, you have like the belt and the body armor and stuff are all sort of.
I think it adds to the realism. I think that what this film, the film trilogy, I think one of the reasons they couldn't go into much detail about Ra's al Ghul was because it does get a bit iffy when you start to say someone is immortal, are they not? Because all these films, the idea is that everything could really happen. Like even Bane at the end, you know, Tom Hardy's shredded, but it's still reasonable. It's not like some of the Bane adaptations where he's just colossal and silly, mainly in the games. But like generally I find that they're trying to base everything in realism. And I feel that the bat suit really works that angle. It makes it feel grounded. You go, oh, it's $1 billion company with a research and development project that do some weapons for the military and other stuff. And then when Bruce Wayne specifically says, he was like, oh, why did this not go anywhere? And then I think Lucius says, like, because they don't want to give these to soldiers at $300,000.
Yeah, soldiers aren't worth that amount of money.
Yeah. And it's like, that makes sense because I'm sure there are in many locked doors and cabinets and maybe Indiana Jones style warehouses. There's probably a lot of random prototypes for certain things. Like I'm sure you probably could get armor that is fully bulletproof that you could wear into battle. But the problem is to create it, to allow it to be, you know, breathable and movable and all these other things. It would probably cost hundreds of, if not millions of dollars to create such a thing. So it's just not worth mass producing them because it's just the amount is not worth it. And I think that in itself in an R&D department does work. And I think that Lucius does come across in the way that he is genuinely interested in this. So I think a lot of the stuff that Batman gets was probably Lucius just kind of having to play around. And then because R&D, he puts it off the records, he's like, I just kind of made this for fun. I've got all this money. Let's just do it. And then, you know, just kind of pushes it away. So I really liked that sort of aspect of it.
One thing I did like about the suit is that there weren't any unnecessary zoom-ins of Batman's crotch.
Or nipples.
Or bum. It was just the suit. It didn't have to focus on any genitalia, which was quite nice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was even with Catwoman, oddly enough, I know I keep flicking backwards and forwards, but obviously Anne Hathaway in that suit is very tight and things, but it's not.
It wasn't as like sexualized as it was with the other one.
When you see in the Arkham games, the I think there's a trilogy, or maybe there's 4 of them. Catwoman in that looks very appealing, but not realistic, not practical. Where she's basically what Anne Hathaway was wearing, but the zip is where her belly button is, and you can just see almost everything. And you know, as a heterosexual male, I'm not necessarily complaining about that. But in a film like with Anne Hathaway trying to be badass, you wouldn't wear something that ridiculously revealing unless it is 100% part of the personality you're kind of trying to convey.
Something that drafty always seems a little bit daft when it comes to costumes like that. Sort of like, I'm a cat burglar, but you basically got your boobs out all the time. Sort of seems a little bit conspicuous. Yeah, no, we'll get to Anne Hathaway because I have mixed feelings about her as Anne Hathaway. But to say about the suit, I agree. I really like the suit and the fact it has this sort of thing of being designed and just so happens to be this prototype that works. But I also again think it adds to this commentary that sort of goes throughout these films of, oh yeah, it costs this much, but we don't think it's worth giving this or manufacturing this for our soldiers. It could save lives, but we're not going to do it. Again, goes into this commentary of there are poor people and there are rich people, and you know some are worth more than others. But yeah. So anyway, as a rounding up before we move on, so rounding up, Batman Begins. What are your thoughts as a final thoughts on a start to the new trilogy? So we've gone into Batman Begins now. You've had it under your belt. What were your thoughts then before you moved on to the next couple of films?
I mean, I was excited for the next couple. I'd seen at that point The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
I've seen it a couple of times before, so I was really excited to go into it. I thought it was a good start to the trilogy. It is my least favorite out of the 3. but I did enjoy it. It was a bit weird that the female protagonist changed actresses
Katie
into
Holmes.
the second film, because Mike was like, "Oh yeah, that's Rachel," and I was like, "Oh."
When Maggie Gyllenhaal popped up, because she asked me, she's like, "Oh, do actors change a lot in this?" And I was like, I'm pretty certain they will stay the same. And then as soon as I saw Katie Holmes, I was like, oh, I forgot about that. 'Cause that was the one person I forgot about. I actually looked it up why, and there wasn't really a good reason. She was just kind of making something else, and you're just thinking it's kind of a dick move. But regardless,
yeah. I don't think it's a bad move. I'm not a fan of Katie Holmes.
that's fair.
I think she's one of the weakest parts of this film, and to change her in for Maggie Gyllenhaal, who is a legitly good actress.
Yeah, she is much better.
It's a definite upgrade in The Dark Knight.
I agree completely. But with Batman Begins, I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I remember enjoying it. I think it's because I've been reading a lot of the Batman comics and stuff a bit more recently, and it does give the most substantial on-screen proper origin story, rather than just, oh, he's rich and his parents got shot. It's like, well, there's got to be more than that. You can't just be wealthy, put on a suit, and beat the crap out of everyone.
To be fair, I did like that about this film. It did give more of an insight into Batman's past.
Yeah, I think the ending was a bit weaker. I did kind of like elements of it, but I found that everything got solved a bit too neatly right at the end, where it was just like, oh, Scarecrow's there. Oh, no, he's suddenly not, because he's just been kind of, hit off and disappears into the abyss. Okay. Oh, and then Ra's al Ghul, the guy who's allegedly immortal, immediately gets destroyed in that monorail. Everything in Gotham is relatively okay now. So I did enjoy it, but I feel like the third act, in my opinion, was probably my least favorite part of it. I did also want to say, regarding you mentioned the thing about the money and all that jazz, is that the Katie Holmes Rachel in Batman Begins, she specifically does, I can't remember what the comment specifically is, but when she gives Bruce Wayne the arrowhead thing back when he's kind of resurfaced, and she does say, she makes some sort of comment about that, because he says about, I think, maybe it's at there's two interactions they have. There's one when he walks out the hotel after buying it all, after he has all the supermodels swimming, and then there's the other time where she goes to Wayne Manor, and then she gives him the box and stuff, and he's like, oh, do you want to come in or something? And she's like, no. And she makes some sort of comment about the money side of things. And I did like that as well. But yeah, I think this is, in my opinion, this is stronger than Rises, but more on the basis that for me, plot trumps, the Batman Begins plot trumps the Rises plot a bit. So, but it's great. I really, really like this one.
Yeah, and I agree. So this is a solid entry. I mean, if this kicking off a trilogy is a good start. It's got some. I really agree with the third act. Like it weirdly sort of lulls back into almost like Burton-verse Batman in that third act, where they're in the Narrows, and all of a sudden, like, you've been in this really realistic, gritty city, and then all of a sudden you're in this what clearly looks like a stage. Soundstage in some areas. It's all very, very grim and very, very sort of like closed in, and there's like pylons between buildings, and it's all a bit stylized again. So it feels a little bit out of place at times, that finale. But I do kind of enjoy it. I mean, the one thing I love in this film is the first car chase, when you first find he first takes the tumbler out and to save Rachel, and the police are all chasing him, and he's on the route. He comes off the top of the car park and he goes across the. And then there's a guy that's like saying, like, what's he driving? What's he look like? And the guy's like, a tank. So
I did forget to say it. I really, really like the Batmobile on this. I
like the vehicles in these movies.
Yeah, I think the Batmobile in itself specifically is basically a tank, and I love. I don't think it looks quite as cool as like 66 Batman, the Batmobile, or maybe even some of the Burtonverse interpretations, apart from, I think one of the later ones has like a fin on it, which I didn't like. But they look very cool, but they're not, practically speaking, they're very small, fast, convertible sort of cars.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like, I remember when I saw it, because I remember I saw Dark Knight before I watched Batman Begins, which is probably part of the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much when I first watched it. Batman Begins it was. But I remember seeing the Batmobile in Dark Knight, and I was like, wow, that's a Batmobile I can get behind, because it looks like it could actually take a punch, rather than being that sort of cartoony, oh, it's just magically invulnerable to everything. It's just like, oh no, this is a tank. And they explain it was like, oh, this was basically a tank that we want to go on this prototypey sort of things, where they made it specifically to match with something else to make a bridge, and then it would jump over it and stuff. And I was like, okay, all of these things do make sense. And I
Yeah.
love that aspect of, rather than it just being we've got this ultimate technology, we press a button, it gets masked in this completely invulnerable thing that looks like carbon fiber, which is a bit meh, but obviously that fits in the world of the Burton-verse.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love the car, and you know, I think the action in this is good. I think you said about the long sort of shots or the long cuts for some of the fighting is really cool. Like, I feel like Bale put a lot into this, so you know, and I like the fact, a bit like with Michael Keaton's as well, though, that in this, Batman's fighting style is always forwards. Like he's always at people, like constantly. You know, it's never sort of like on the back foot. Like he would rather take a punch than step backwards, and he's always going forward. So I do enjoy that. And obviously, towards the end, then we do get. There's two things actually to highlight. We've talked about people knowing that he's Batman. You say about Rachel Dawes, and she says it's not about what we do. It's about, or whatever it was. It's not about who we are. It's about what we do that matters, or that kind of thing. And then he repeats it on the rooftops, and she's like, Bruce?
Oh, yeah.
And it's another one of those moments when you're just like, just tell her? Like, what? Like, you know, I know it's supposed to be a cool moment, but like over the years, I think that one moment hasn't aged well. I'm just like, oh. But apart from that, I really do enjoy this film. And it ends on a great sort of, when this came out, and it ends on one of those sort of like Easter eggy cliffhangers where he's on the roof with Jim Gordon, who's now Lieutenant Gordon, and he says, "Oh, you know, now you're here. Oh, escalation." That's what he talks about, and that's what I like. He says, "Well, you know, we buy automatics, and then you know, we get guns, so the criminals get automatic weapons. We buy body armor, so they buy armor-piercing rounds. Now there's you. Like, what comes next? How do they escalate?" And that's sort of that leading. Then he says, you know, take this guy, for example. Like, he robs banks and does things and leaves a calling card, and he flips it over, and it's the Joker. And I remember being very excited when that came about. Because you're like, oh, what they're going to do. Well, before we find out what they did and what I was excited about, I'm going to have to intercede, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, but we are going to be jumping into this stuff in the next episode. That's right, this one, like the last one, was a mega conversation, an absolutely corker, and there was so much in there that I didn't want to lose anything. So, again, I have split it into 2 episodes. This is 3A, the first part of our Christopher Nolan part of the retrospective, as you can tell. So, I hope you've enjoyed our discussion around Batman Begins. In the next episode, as you can probably guess, we're going to be talking about The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. So, if you would like to come in and talk about any of the things we've spoken about Batman over the last couple of weeks, make contact with us. We are on social media. You can be found on Twitter and Facebook and the lot under @20thCenturyGeek. You can email me directly. That's 20thCenturyGeek@gmail.com. And if you want to find out all the things we're up to, and past, present, and possibly future, go and look at 20thCenturyGeek.com. There's a whole load of blogs on there, reviews, film, book, movies, all kinds of things, and then all the podcast episodes. More than that, if you want to support the show in any way, shape or form, please leave a review somewhere or just share a tweet, a Facebook post, something with a friend, let them know about the show. But if you really like the show and you really want to support it, we have a Patreon. That's right, Patreon/20th Century Geek, where there is a monthly podcast, votes on show content and other bits and pieces. So please go check that out. Other than that, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.